Esha had always believed in arranged marriages. Maybe it was her upbringing, maybe her parents' love story that blossomed post-marriage, but she had faith in the idea that love could grow with time. So when her mother introduced her to Neil Sinha, a calm, confident, and kind software engineer, she didn't hesitate. Their first meeting was in a cozy little cafe tucked between bookshops. Esha remembered that day vividly, the warmth of the cappuccino in her hands, the nervous tapping of her foot under the table, and Neil's steady gaze that made her cheeks flush. "I don't believe in perfect people," he had said, smiling. "But I do believe in honest ones." Something in that statement had reassured her. His eyes didn't dart around the room. He asked questions, genuinely listened, and even remembered the little things she said, like how her favorite flowers were lilies, and how she dreamed of opening an art studio someday. The rishta moved fast. Both families clicked instantly. Her parents adored him. Her father, who rarely smiled at any prospect, clapped Neil on the shoulder and said, "I think you're going to take good care of my daughter." They got married in early spring. The air was crisp with jasmine and hope. Esha wore a pastel pink lehenga and walked down the aisle with dreams in her eyes. Neil, in his cream sherwani, looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. That night, lying next to him in their new home, Neil had whispered, "We're strangers today, but I promise, I'll never let you feel alone." And Esha believed him. Their life started beautifully. Neil was thoughtful. He brought her tea in the mornings, left notes in her lunchbox, and always called to check if she'd eaten when he was working late. Every Sunday, they'd go for long walks in the park, talking about life, the people they wanted to become, and the places they wanted to travel. He supported her dream of being an artist. When she timidly showed him her first canvas after the wedding, afraid he might laugh, he had stared at it silently, then turned to her and said, "You have magic in your hands." He cleared a corner of the living room just for her, called it Esha's studio, and even bought her a wooden easel. It became her sacred space. Evenings were full of music, shared laughter, and silly board games. She started painting more, vibrant colors, soft strokes, and a lightness in her heart. She thought, this is what love is. Safe, warm, and kind. Their marriage, at first, was like a gentle song, steady and soothing. But like any song, it had silent pauses. And Esha didn't notice when those began. The first signs were subtle. Neil, who once rushed home to see her, began taking late-night work calls more frequently. He seemed distracted during dinners, his phone always lighting up with unread messages. When Esha asked if something was bothering him, he simply smiled and said, "Just deadlines, sweetheart. Nothing else." She didn't press. After all, every marriage had its ups and downs. On their 6-month anniversary, she surprised him with his favorite pasta, a new shirt, and a handwritten letter expressing how grateful she felt to him. He read it with a tired smile. "You're too sweet," he said, kissing her forehead. But she noticed, his eyes weren't smiling like they used to. That night, she stood by the window, watching him scroll on his phone in bed, fingers moving quickly. She turned away before he noticed her watching. Then came the name. The one Esha would never forget. Nisha. It came up in passing. They were cleaning the kitchen when his phone rang. Esha glimpsed the name and raised an eyebrow. "Who's Nisha?" she asked casually. Neil froze for a split second. Just a flicker. Then he said, "An ex from college. She texted to wish me well. I didn't reply." "Ah," Esha nodded, not pushing further. She trusted him. People had passed. It wasn't a crime. But later that night, she thought about how quickly he had answered. How prepared the response had seemed. And that flicker in his eyes, was it surprise, or guilt? Still, she tucked the worry away. Love, she told herself, wasn't about overthinking. It was about choosing to believe. Around the 8-month mark, things got colder. Neil stopped noticing her new paintings. The easel gathered dust. He came home later, hugged her less, and kissed her like it was a chore. On some days, she woke up and found his side of the bed untouched. One evening, as she sat on the balcony sipping chai, her mother called. Casey ho, Eshu. And for the first time in months, Eshu's voice broke. Main Thikun, Ma. But she wasn't. The fracture hadn't shown itself completely yet, but the cracks were forming. And somewhere, deep inside, Eshu began to fear something she hadn't dared to imagine. That maybe the man who promised her forever was still holding on to a piece of his past. The days that followed were silent, but not peaceful. Eshu began to notice things she had previously ignored, the absences, the disconnect, the way Neil's fingers moved swiftly over his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. His eyes didn't meet hers the way they used to. And when they did, they didn't linger. Once, she tried to cuddle up to him during a weekend movie night. He smiled, put his arm around her, but kept glancing at his phone. It buzzed twice, short, sharp vibrations. He didn't check it. Not immediately. But his eyes flicked to the screen with a look she couldn't place. She sat up, pulled her knees to her chest, and stared at the screen without really watching. A few days later, she found him standing on the balcony late at night, whispering into the phone. When she opened the sliding door, he flinched and ended the call quickly. It was Rakesh from work, he said. Project stuff. At 11:45 p.m. She didn't ask. She nodded and went to bed alone. She stopped painting. The easel in the corner of the room stood like a forgotten monument to a time when she believed she was loved. The brushes dried out. The canvas remained white. Instead of colors, Eshu filled her time with questions, ones she'd never asked aloud. What changed? Why won't he talk to me like before? Am I doing something wrong? She began second-guessing herself, her looks, her words, her silences. Was she too clingy? Too boring? Too ordinary for a man like Neil? Her mind became a storm of self-doubt. And through it all, Neil moved to their home like a ghost, present in body, but distant in soul. Then came the weekend that broke her. It was a Sunday morning, and she decided to surprise him with breakfast in bed, just like she used to in their early months. She made his favorite, aloo parathas with mango pickle and masala chai. Balanced the tray carefully and walked into the bedroom, humming softly. Neil was asleep, his phone on the side table, unlocked. It was rare. He usually kept it locked with Face ID. She placed the tray down and picked it up, intending to set it aside. But a message popped up. A name. Nisha. Her heart stopped. Then, the message. Greater than. Still thinking about that night. Every moment of it. You felt the same. Right? The phone slipped from her hands and hit the carpet with a soft thud. Neil stirred. She stared at him. At his peaceful face. The mouth that had once whispered I love you now held silence thick with betrayal. He opened his eyes grudgingly. Hey. You okay? Eshu said nothing. She just stared. And Neil knew. She saw the realization dawn in his expression, the flicker of guilt, the flash of fear. He sat up slowly. Eshu. She held up a hand. Don't. Just. Don't. Her voice trembled, but her face was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. For a long time, they sat in silence. The only sound in the room was the soft clinking of spoons on the breakfast tray as the tea cooled beside them. Finally, Neil spoke. It was just once. Eshu turned to him. Her voice was quiet. You slept with her? He nodded, barely. Her hands clenched into fists. When? Neil looked down. 3 weeks ago. She called. Said she needed closure. She called. Said she needed closure. We met for coffee. It just happened. Tears welled up in Esha's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. So when you came home that night, she said, you kissed me. Slept next to me. After sleeping with someone else. He swallowed hard. It was a mistake. I didn't plan it. She laughed. Not out of humor, but disbelief. Do mistakes text you afterward saying how unforgettable the night was? Neil winced. She's confused. She still has feelings, but I told her it's over. Esha shook her head. You told me it was over a long time ago. That she was your past. She is. No, Esha said coldly, I am your present. And you chose to betray me with your past. He reached out for her hand. She pulled away. I'm sorry, Esh. I didn't mean to hurt you. Her eyes burned. But you did. You chose to meet her. You chose to go back to her, even if just for one night. You had a choice. And you didn't choose me. Neil was silent. For the first time, Esha felt a wave of something stronger than pain, clarity. The man in front of her wasn't the same man she had married. Or maybe he was, and she just hadn't seen it. She stood up, wiping her tears away. I need space, she whispered. I'm going to stay with my parents for a few days. Neil stood too. Please, don't leave. Let's fix this. I love you. Esha looked him in the eye. You loved her that night. That's all I need to know. She packed a small bag, not out of rage, but resolve. Took one last look at the home they had built, now cracked with betrayal. Before she left, she turned and said, Neil, I don't know if I'll come back. But if I do, it won't be to save us. It'll be to save me. Esha hadn't planned on telling her parents everything. But the moment she stepped through their door, her mother took one look at her tear-streaked face and pulled her into an embrace that undid her completely. What happened, Beta? Her mother whispered. Esha broke down, right there in the foyer, her head buried in her mother's shoulder, releasing the grief she'd held back for weeks. She didn't give every detail, but her parents understood enough. Her father, who had once shaken Neil's hand with pride, sat in silent disbelief. That night, in the quiet of her childhood bedroom, Esha scrolled through old photos on her phone, their wedding, their first vacation, the silly selfies from Sunday walks. Every image now felt like a cruel lie. She stared at a picture of Neil kissing her forehead while she painted. Was he already thinking of her then? Of Nisha? Her phone buzzed. It was him. Greater than Neil, I can't sleep. I'm so sorry. I miss you. She didn't respond. Greater than Neil, please don't give up on us. I made a mistake, but I love you. I swear. Esha placed the phone face down and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The words meant nothing now. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this, like a wound wrapped in pretty apologies. The next morning, she woke up early and went for a walk, the same path she used to take before her marriage, past the temple, across the lake, and through the quiet alleyways of her old neighborhood. Her mind replayed everything, every red flag she'd ignored, every smile she'd forced. But what hurt the most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that she had begged herself to believe in a love that no longer existed. When she returned, her mother had made tea and was waiting quietly at the dining table. Sometimes, her mother said gently, loving someone means letting them go, especially if holding on only breaks you further. Esha nodded, holding back fresh tears. She wanted to be strong. She had to be. That evening, another message came in, this time not from Neil. It was from a number she didn't recognize. Greater than Nisha. I'm sorry for reaching out. I know you must hate me. But you deserve the truth. Esha froze. Her hands trembled as she clicked on the message thread. There were screenshots of conversations between Nisha and Neil, of messages sent weeks before the night they supposedly slipped. Nisha had written, "Greater than, do you really mean it? That you still love me?" And Neil had replied, "Greater than, I don't know what to do. I care about Esha, but with you, it feels like home again." Another message. Greater than, sometimes I wish we'd never broken up. Maybe this marriage was a mistake. Esha dropped the phone. Her stomach turned. She had thought it was a one-night lapse, a stupid, shameful mistake. But this wasn't that. This was emotional betrayal long before the physical one. Neil hadn't just cheated on her body. He had cheated on her soul. She sat in the bathroom for over an hour, her knees pulled to her chest. Her mind reeled from the messages, the duplicity, the way he had kissed her goodnight while dreaming of someone else. And yet, in the middle of all that pain, a strange clarity surfaced, like the calm that comes after a long, devastating storm. She deserved better. Not just from Neil, but from herself. 2 days later, Neil showed up at her parents' house. Her mother opened the door, frown deepening as she called out, "Esha. He's here." Esha came down slowly. Neil stood at the doorway, looking disheveled, like he hadn't slept. His eyes searched hers, but she gave him nothing. "I needed to see you," he said softly. Esha nodded to her mother, who left the room reluctantly. They sat on the living room sofa. A quiet chasm stretched between them. "I don't know where to start," Neil said. "Then don't," Esha replied. He sighed. "I know I've broken your trust. But I swear, I was confused. Seeing Nisha again stirred things up, but it made me realize something too. I don't want her. I want you. I love you." Esha stared at him. "You told her our marriage was a mistake." Neil paled. "She showed you the messages?" "She didn't need to. Your actions said enough." "But yes. She did." He buried his face in his hands. "I didn't mean those things. I was lost." Esha stood up slowly. Her voice was calm. Strong. Clear. "No. You weren't lost. You knew exactly what you were doing. You told her you loved her. You told me you loved me. You can't play both sides and call it confusion." Neil looked up, eyes wet. "I'm sorry." "So am I," Esha said. "Sorry that I trusted you. Sorry that I made excuses for you. And sorry that I believed love alone was enough to keep a marriage alive." He begged again. Cried. Promised he'd cut all ties with Nisha. Promised he'd go to therapy. Do anything. But Esha only shook her head. "You left me emotionally long before I packed my bags," she said. "I just didn't see it. But now I do." Neil looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, the strength in her posture, the fire in her eyes. She wasn't the broken girl who had walked out of their apartment. She was a woman who had found herself in the wreckage. And she was not coming back. That night, Esha began the process of filing for separation. Her parents stood by her. Her friends rallied around her. And though the pain still throbbed beneath the surface, she knew this was the first step toward healing. She would rebuild. Not because Neil wanted her to forgive and forget, but because she wanted herself back. Esha never imagined her marriage would end like this, not with screaming or chaos, but with cold, bitter clarity. In the days after she told Neil she wanted a separation, everything slowed down. The pain didn't vanish, but it dulled, replaced by something firmer, resolve. She spent her mornings helping her mother in the kitchen, her afternoons painting again, finally, with shaky but determined hands, and her evenings journaling thoughts she once kept hidden even from herself. Her diary filled with raw truths. "I loved someone who didn't love me back in the way I deserved. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from within. I deserve peace, even if I have to build it alone. But peace, she learned, is never a straight road. One Friday morning, a parcel arrived. Her mother handed it to her. It's from Neil. Esha stared at it for a long time. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a small box containing their wedding album, the one she had left behind. Tucked between the pages was a note, handwritten on crumpled paper. Greater than every picture in here reminds me of what I destroyed. I don't expect forgiveness, Esha. But I needed you to know, I will regret losing you every single day for the rest of my life. She closed the album. Her heart felt like it had been wrung dry. But there were no tears this time. Not because it didn't hurt, but because she had cried enough. That night, her phone rang again. Neil. She stared at the screen for a full minute before picking up. She didn't speak first. I'm not calling to change your mind, Neil said. His voice was hoarse. I just wanted to thank you. For what? Esha asked, voice guarded. For being the best thing that ever happened to me. Even if I didn't deserve you. Silence. I've started therapy, he continued. It's helping me see how much damage I caused. Not just to you. To myself. Esha took a deep breath. I hope you heal, Neil. I really do. I'll always love you. She closed her eyes. Then you should have protected me. She ended the call. The following week, she was invited to showcase her art at a local exhibit. It was her first public display in over a year. She had almost said no, the thought of standing in a room full of strangers terrified her. But then she remembered who she used to be, the Esha before Neil, before betrayal, before heartbreak. The girl who painted for herself. She said yes. The night of the exhibit, she stood beside her canvas, a large piece titled Unraveled. It showed a woman in a red sari, her silhouette cracking like porcelain. Colors pouring out from every fracture. People stopped and stared. Some asked questions. One woman, eyes wet, whispered, "This feels like me." Esha smiled for the first time in weeks, not the polite, hollow smile she had worn during her marriage. A real one. One born from recognition, not performance. She wasn't just healing. She was rediscovering herself. After the exhibit, her childhood friend, Arjun, came up to her with a sheepish grin. I always knew you'd do something powerful, he said. Esha laughed. You mean messy strokes and emotional chaos. That's where the truth lies, right? He said. They talked for hours. About old times. About lost time. Arjun had always been the quiet listener, the one who never interrupted her thoughts. That night, he reminded her what it felt like to be heard without judgment. And for the first time since the betrayal, Esha didn't think about Neil. Not even once. A few days later, the lawyer called. The papers were ready. All Esha had to do was sign. She sat alone at the dining table, pen in hand, eyes scanning the lines that would officially end her marriage. There was no joy in it. No victory. Only acceptance. She signed. And with that, the chapter closed. 1 month passed. Then 2. Then spring arrived, and with it, new energy. Esha began teaching art at a local school twice a week. She started a blog, sharing her journey of heartbreak and healing. The response was overwhelming. Women wrote to her, thanking her for putting into words what they had felt but never dared say. She was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. One evening, she stood in her balcony with a cup of chai, watching the sun dip below the skyline. Her mother came out and stood beside her. You seem lighter, she said. I am, Esha replied. It still hurts sometimes. But it doesn't control me anymore. Her mother touched her shoulder. You've come a long way, Beta. I had no choice, Aisha smiled faintly.
Choosing him broke me. Choosing myself saved me that night. Arjun texted dinner this weekend. I promise not to talk about heavy stuff. Just food, laughter, and maybe some really bad jokes. Aisha replied. Only if you bring dessert. Done. I'll bring the worst chocolate cake you've ever tasted. Perfect. She smiled. Maybe this was how healing happened, not all at once but in small sweet moments, in knowing you deserved more and finally having the courage to reach for it. The restaurant wasn't fancy, just a cozy place tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, the kind of spot you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. But that's exactly why Aisha liked it. No flash, no noise, just warmth and quiet laughter. Arjun was already at the table when she arrived, tapping his fingers nervously on the edge of his glass. He stood when he saw her, that familiar half-smile spreading across his face. You're late, he said teasingly. I needed time to emotionally prepare for the world's worst chocolate cake, she replied. Grinning, they both laughed. It felt easy, natural. Like slipping into a conversation that had paused, not ended. Dinner was filled with harmless teasing, shared memories, and silly stories. Arjun told her about his failed attempt at baking banana bread, which ended with smoke alarms and an angry neighbor. She told him about a new student who had painted her entire canvas blue and called it freedom, but underneath the laughter was a quiet tension, not uncomfortable but noticeable. Like both of them were dancing near the edge of something unspoken when dessert arrived, a decent chocolate cake, not nearly as bad as he'd warned. Arjun leaned forward slightly. I'm really glad we reconnected, he said. Aisha nodded. Me too, I wanted to tell you something for a while now. She looked up, heart fluttering. I liked you once, Arjun confessed. Back in college, but you were with someone else. And I respected that. Aisha felt her breath catch. I never said anything. But seeing you now, the strength in your eyes, the way you've rebuilt yourself, I'd be lying if I said those feelings hadn't returned. He paused. I'm not trying to complicate things. I just wanted to be honest. Aisha stared at him, processing his words. It wasn't what he said that moved her, it was how he said it. Gently, without expectation, without pressure. I don't know what the future holds, she said slowly. But I do know I'm not the same woman I was a few months ago. I'm still healing. Arjun nodded. Then let's just start with friendship. No labels, no pressure, just honesty. She smiled. That I can do. In the weeks that followed, Arjun became a constant presence in her life, not as a distraction but as a companion. They went for walks, shared playlists, argued over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Aisha insisted it didn't. Arjun was deeply offended. More importantly, he listened. Really listened, and he never once tried to erase her past. Instead, he gave her space to carry it without shame. One afternoon, while cleaning out a box of old things, Aisha found a letter she'd written to herself on her wedding night but never opened. A private tradition she'd started as a teenager, writing letters to her future self on big days. She sat on her bed and unfolded the envelope. Dear Aisha. Tonight, you married the man you love. I hope he sees the softness in you and protects it. I hope he listens when you fall silent. I hope he never makes you feel invisible. But if one day he does, I hope you remember who you were before him. I hope you choose yourself. She clutched the letter to her chest, tears rolling down her cheeks, not from pain, but from pride, because she had done exactly that. Her divorce was finalized a few weeks later. Neil didn't show up at the final hearing. Just his lawyer. It was oddly fitting, his absence speaking louder than his words ever did. Aisha walked out of the courthouse alone. And for the first time, that word alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like freedom. That evening, she sat on her balcony again, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. Arjun arrived with coffee, 2 cups balanced in one hand, a paintbrush in the other. What's that for? She asked, amused. For you, he said, handing her the brush. I thought you might want to paint the sunset. She took the brush. You know I'm terrible at landscapes. Then paint how it makes you feel. She looked out at the horizon, her heart beating slow and steady. I feel like I'm finally breathing again. He smiled. Then paint that, and so she did. Months passed, seasons changed. Aisha's blog gained more readers, women, men, survivors of heartbreak who found pieces of themselves in her words. She started hosting workshops on emotional healing through art. She was building something, not just a career, but a purpose. As for Arjun, remained by her side, patient, steady, kind. One day, as they walked past the lake near her childhood home, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away because now she knew love didn't have to come wrapped in grand gestures or pretty lies. It could come quietly, respectfully, with space for growth, and room for scars. Years later, when people asked Aisha how she survived that heartbreak, the betrayal, the humiliation, the grief, she would say this: he left me, yes. But what he really did was set me free, because if he hadn't broken me, I would have never learned to rebuild myself better. He married me, but he left his heart with someone else, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it gave me back my own.